There is something in you that has always been there, hidden but present, a silent presence coiled at the base of your spine like a sleeping serpent. It does not move, but it feels. It does not speak, but it listens. And when the right winds blow in your soul, it stirs. It is your Kundalini, the hidden breath of fire that resides where the visible world ends and the invisible begins. Perhaps you have never heard this call clearly, or perhaps you have ignored it, mistaking it for a nameless restlessness, a spiritual hunger that visits you at night in the silence. But now something in you is beginning to remember. You are not hearing these words by chance. There is something in you that is beginning to understand that what you sought outside has always been inside. The search for power, pleasure, peace, or fulfillment, they all connect to the same root. Because the energy that pulses in your most intense desires is the same that can lift you to the highest realms of consciousness. But this energy needs to be understood, honored, and directed. And it all begins with recognizing the serpent. Have you ever felt that there is more to you than what you show the world? More than your body, your name, your profession? There is a pulsating intelligence that wants to guide you, not with logic, but with symbols, not with formulas, but with presence. And this intelligence has a name, Kundalini. It is not by chance that it is portrayed as a serpent. The symbol is ancient. From Hermes's caduceus to the rituals of the Andean peoples, the serpent represents healing, regeneration, and wisdom. And the fact that it is coiled symbolizes its latency, its waiting. It does not act by force, it waits for your readiness. But when it rises, its movement is spiral, sacred, eternal, as like the universe itself. Perhaps you are afraid of what might happen when you awaken it, and that is understandable. After all, it is not an ordinary energy. It is the energy of creation, the same force that conceives a new life, that makes a seed break through the earth, that guides the tides and the birth of stars. When you awaken your Kundalini, you are not just feeling more energy. You are reconnecting with the creative principle. This requires preparation, but it also requires courage. At this moment, you may feel something light, like a gentle warmth at the base of your spine, or perhaps a stillness that you haven't felt before. This is a sign of listening, of allowing. Your attention is key, because where your attention goes, energy flows, and where energy flows, life happens differently, more vivid, more intense, more true. Most people live with this dormant force, and so they feel a constant emptiness, a kind of subtle misalignment with their own existence. They seek something to fill them, but they don't know what. Work, relationships, distractions, all of these take up the space of what is asking to emerge, the awareness of the sacred within you, and this awareness begins when you honor the place where everything rests, the base. The first chakra, the Tasi, home of the serpent. Instead of ignoring this base or treating it as just instinct or impulse, you begin to look at it with reverence, because it is there in that inner soil that the tree of your ascension is born. All your energy comes from there, and if you waste it, if you dissipate it without intention, there will be no fuel for your elevation. This is where the call begins, a call for you to observe how you handle your vital energy, how you feel, how you desire, how you express it, because that which is wasted in haste or unconsciousness cannot be used to ascend, and that which is retained with fear or repression will not serve either. The secret lies in alchemy, in the balance between containing and allowing, between breathing and offering. And if up until now you feel like you are hearing something that you always knew but never had the words for, comment below. Share this feeling of "I always knew this" with other seekers. And if this message touched you in any way, like this video and subscribe to the channel. This is how you help this message reach where it needs to. You were made to believe that desire was something wrong. From an early age, they placed on your shoulders the weight of a silent inheritance, guilt. Not a guilt that is born naturally within you, but one that was taught, repeated, and ingrained. They said that feeling was a sin, that wanting was weakness, that pleasure was a deviation. And so you learn to hide your own nature, to refuse that which is a living pulse, a sacred power. But listen carefully, the sin is not in desire. Then, error is in the ignorance of what it really is. Desire is not dirt, It is movement. It is life calling for expression. It is the dance of energy within you, asking for passage. What contaminates is not feeling, but forgetting the purpose of what you feel. When you seek pleasure only as an escape, without awareness, without presence, without honor, it becomes an empty echo. But when you look at desire with reverence, something changes. It becomes a portal. There is something that perhaps you have never heard clearly. Pleasure is one of the most direct manifestations of the divine presence in the body. It is not contrary to the spirit. It is a bridge. The problem is not feeling, but not knowing what to do with what you feel. You have been taught to separate body and soul, as if one contradicted the other. But there is no real division. The body is a temple, and the desire that arises in it can be used for your downfall or your ascension. It depends on how you look at it. In many ancient and secret traditions, desire was understood as a flame that if lit with awareness illuminates sacred paths, but if lit in haste or in ignorance it consumes everything around it and leaves only ashes. The burning of the flesh is not what hurts. It is the burning without direction, without surrender, without truth. You are not impure for desiring. You are not less spiritual for feeling the pulse of pleasure. In fact, this feeling is a reminder. There is life in you. There is energy wanting to move, and it can take you far beyond what you imagine if you learn to listen to it. At the root of all sexual energy is an invitation, not to dissipation, but to transcendence. And when you refuse that invitation out of fear or shame, something inside you closes down. But when you accept it with presence, your body opens like a flower in the sun, and your soul smiles, because finally, it is not being denied. It is being heard. You have heard of Kundalini as if it were a distant myth, a concept shrouded in mystery. But the truth is that it has always been there, silent, alive, coiled, dormant at the base of your spine, like a sacred serpent waiting for the right moment to rise. Not as something external to you, but as the purest expression of the divine presence that inhabits your body. Kundalini is not a force to be feared. It is not savagery, nor madness, nor uncontrolled fire. It is intelligence, ancient, precise, loving. It is the spark of creation, the same one that molded stars and breathed life into the clay of your flesh. It is within you as a promise, as a dormant potential that awaits only your spiritual maturity to awaken. And why is it dormant? Because the awakening of Kundalini is not a spectacle, it is a pact, an alignment between your soul and your body, between your mind and your silence. It does not move because you want it to. It moves when you are ready, when the internal structure has been cleansed, when the channels have been cleared, when the ego no longer screams so loudly, and the heart begins to hear what it has always been whispering. It runs through the nadis, the subtle channels of your energy system. They are not veins, they are not nerves. They are invisible rivers, shaped by your consciousness, that intertwine like webs of light. When these channels are clear, it rises. When they are blocked, it waits. Because the force of Kundalini is like the ocean, beautiful and overwhelming. If your inner vessel is not prepared, it can sink instead of sailing. That is why many traditions called this force Shakti, the creative energy of the Divine Mother. It is not just force, it is primordial feminine consciousness, not in the sense of gender but of nature. It is receptive, healing, intuitive, expansive. When it awakens, you do not just feel energy, you perceive the truth behind all forms. You begin to see with eyes that are not in your face, to hear with ears that are not in your head, knowing with a knowledge that was not learned, it was remembered. This force is not a mystical luxury. It is your spiritual inheritance. It is your direct connection with God in raw form. It does not need temples to manifest itself, because it is the temple. And every time you breathe with intention, silence with reverence, purify your body and mind, it moves even if subtly. Make no mistake, the awakening of Kundalini is not about having powers, visions, or ecstasies. It is about becoming real, integral, aligned with your origin. Because when it rises, you become no more than human. You remember what it means to be fully human. Now you begin to see the hidden map within you, 7 portals, 7 centers of power. These are not mere ideas or colorful figures on spiritual posters. They are real stations, silently vibrating in the temple of your body, where divine energy gathers, disperses, or transforms. The first is rooted at the base of your spine, the Muladhara. Here, energy is still earth, still survival, fear, instinct. If you live in constant tension, if security always seems threatened, this is where the flow stagnates. But this is also where the journey begins. If there is no route, there is no ascent. You cannot ascend to heaven without first embracing the earth. Higher up, the second portal, Svadhisthana, the womb, the river of emotions, the place where creative energy pulsates, where pleasure and pain intertwine like tides. Here it is easy to get lost. This is where sexual energy, if misunderstood, slips through your fingers like sand. But if respected, welcomed, transmuted, it becomes sacred fuel. You follow. Manipura, the solar plexus, fire, will. Here is, born your affirmation in the world, your ability to say I am. It is here that energy can flare up in pride or burn in anger. But when tamed, it becomes inner light, clarity, serene courage. In the center of the chest, the fourth portal, Anahata, the heart, the air that circulates between all the other centers. Here, the energy begins to purify itself. It is where the strength ceases to be yours alone and connects with the whole. When the heart is open, the energy rises gently, effortlessly, as if attracted by a magnetic field of love. Next, Vishuddha, the throat, the place of true expression. How many times have you silenced your soul to fit in? Here the flow is blocked if the truth is denied. But when you speak with integrity, when the word aligns with the spirit, the sound becomes sacred. The word becomes a bridge between worlds. You approach the sixth center, Ajna, the third eye. It is not just spiritual vision. It is discernment. It is the ability to see through illusion. Here, energy does not just rise, it illuminates, inner. Shadows fade as you look with expanded awareness. And finally, the seventh, Sahasrara, the crown, the 1,000-petaled. Here, energy dissolves into the divine. There is no more I, there is only flow, a silence filled with presence, an emptiness so full that you understand. Everything you sought outside has always been inside. These portals are not fixed ladders, they are mirrors. And the energy that rises through them is not just rising, it is being refined. With each chakra, a purification. With each station, a choice, to waste or to transmute. Now you know, your body is an altar, and each chakra, a candle lit or extinguished. The choice is yours to rekindle them one by one, until the inner light becomes so intense that nothing remains but the truth. You begin to realize that there is something going on beyond what meets the eye every time you give in to instinctual impulse. Every time you allow that life force to escape without awareness. It is not punishment, it is not moralizing, it is energy. It is light being dissipated, spilled, dispersed like perfume on the wind. Every time you give in to unconscious desire, without presence, without reverence, something goes out. It is like lighting a torch only to have it consumed in seconds by an explosion that could, if redirected, illuminate entire days of your soul. You feel it, though you cannot explain it. A void that comes afterward, a subtle haze, a loss of clarity, of purpose, of direction. The mind that once reached upward now wanders. The body that was once aligned seems scattered, as if something precious has been stolen. But it was not stolen, it was given away. Pleasure itself is not impure. The body is not the enemy. The natural impulse is part of creation. But the question is how you access it. Whether it is with gratitude and awareness, or with haste, escape, and forgetfulness. Whether it is a ritual or a discharge. Whether it is a seed or waste. What many do not see is that the release of the creative fluid, whether in men or women, carries with it particles of the soul, fragments of condensed light. Every time this happens without intention, you are giving up spiritual fuel. You are choosing momentary relief instead of deep transmutation, And this has consequences. The auric field weakens, the subtle channels become obstructed, the Kundalini serpent, sensitive and alive, feels that the temple is not ready. It waits and waits. While you remain in cycles of unconscious pleasure, it remains dormant, not out of punishment, but out of wisdom. You then realize that your creative energy is the raw material of your ascension. It is like the oil of the inner lamp. And every time you waste it, the wick of your light shortens, but this is not an end, it is a call, an invitation to slow down, to feel, to observe, to transform the impulse into prayer, the heat into devotion, to allow this force, instead of dissolving outwards, to rise inwards. Because within you, every drop of energy that is kept with honor is converted into light. And this light begins to rise. The mistake many make when they discover the power of retention is to transform this practice into penance. They deny their impulses, fear their desire, and lock up their bodies as if they were enemies to be defeated. But the path to awakening does not require imprisonment. It requires awareness. You can indeed feel pleasure. You can indeed welcome the warmth of life into every cell. What changes is how you deal with this heat, whether it consumes you or warms you, whether it drags you down or elevates you. The secret is in presence. When you are present, the impulse does not become a prison, it becomes a bridge between worlds. You begin to realize that you can remain whole even at the height of excitement, that you can welcome the energy without letting it escape, that you can circulate this fire through your internal channels like someone channeling a river through the mountains of the spirit. It is like transforming thunder into melody. The power is there, but not to hurt, but to guide. You feel that retention is no longer about abstaining, but about transmuting, about conducting, about staying awake in the moment when, before, you were asleep. And then the body stops being a battlefield and becomes a temple. Pleasure stops being a risk and becomes prayer. You no longer need to run away from touch, from desire, from heat, because now you have learned to stay, to breathe within it, to no longer get lost. You see that suffering only arises when there is blind resistance, but integration brings lightness. And in this new internal space, where there is no guilt or denial, your energy settles, serene, powerful, silent. This is where you begin to reverse the cycle. Instead of emptying yourself on impulse, you begin to fill yourself completely. Instead of blaming yourself for feeling, you begin to be grateful for being able to transmute. And what before seemed like a prison reveals itself as freedom. Now that the fire is lit, you must learn to guide it. And this is where the ancients come in, the invisible masters who for millennia have walked this path in silence. Their footprints are not in books, they are in the ether, in the vibration of the practices they left as living maps. You begin to hear the sound of nothingness, and in that nothingness, the first mantra emerges. Not a pretty sound for the mind to repeat, but a vibration that dissolves the veils of the subtle body. Soham, Om Namah Shivaya, Sat Chit Ananda. Each sound a key, each syllable a touch to the sleeping serpent that rests at the base of your spine. You feel. It is not mental, it is visceral, a call that comes from within, as if your body has always known the melody of ascension. Then comes the breath. Not the ordinary, automatic, anxious breath, but the breath that reveals the worlds. Pranayamas. You begin with alternate breathing. Then you know the breath of fire. And finally, you find the silence that lives between inhalation and exhalation. In this space, time bends. And that is where energy moves. It rises. But it only rises if you know how to move with it. That is why yogis created postures, not as gymnastics, but as living antennas. Each asana opens a channel, each stretch undoes a knot. You notice that, with the body aligned, the energy no longer encounters resistance. It dances, first gently, then with fervor, until it settles in the heart, in the throat, between the eyebrows, and there at the top you learn the last secret, devotion, because it is not about control. It never was. It is about surrender. The force that awakens within you is not yours, and it is divine. And when you sing, pray, meditate, or simply remain silent with reverence, this energy recognizes you and reveals itself. It is not something that can be forced. You learn to touch the Kundalini as if you were touching a living being, with respect, with patience, with love. And the more you purify yourself, the more it trusts. And the more it trusts, the higher it rises. Thus you enter the ancient mysteries, a secret vibrational field sustained by millennia of silent practice, a field that still pulsates in the invisible, waiting for those who approach it with humility, as you are doing now. Now you begin to realize, retaining is not storing. It is not a rigid effort of containment like someone holding on to something they want to escape. No, retaining is transforming. It is allowing something raw, still in an instinctive state, to be elevated and purified until it becomes a creative light. The energy that was previously lost in unconscious moments now becomes raw material for something sacred. You feel this when you wake up with more clarity, when your gaze deepens, when your presence affects the environment, even in silence. There is a force that springs from within, as if the universe itself had found a home within you. Alchemy begins there. That energy that was once simply pleasure now reveals itself as an impulse to create. The same impulse that gives rise to a body can now give rise to ideas, works, cures, paths. You understand what the ancients called co-creation. It is not you who creates alone. It is God creating through you when your cup is full, clean, and consecrated. This is the point where you stop living as an empty vessel, sucking in external experiences to feel alive. Now you emanate, you transmit, you manifest. Because what vibrates within you is so strong, so refined, that it naturally shapes the reality around you. And this is not naive magic. It is vibrational correspondence. It is law. What you cultivate, internally, the images, the feelings, the intentions, begin to externalize themselves effortlessly. It is as if the world outside responds to the world that you sustain here within. And all this has become possible because you no longer waste your spark. You honor it, elevate it, and give it back to the source. In this state, desire does not disappear, it is purified. It ceases to be a search for pleasure and becomes a desire to express the divine. This is why great artists, prophets, and visionaries have always walked hand in hand with profound spiritual practices. They were not just creating works, they were channeling realities. Now it is you who does this, not out of ego, not out of vanity, but out of reverence, because you know, when the energy of life is transmuted, the impossible bends, and the invisible reveals itself. Up until now, everything has been preparation, cleansing, holding, elevating. But now something begins to come together within you, not as a theory, but as an intimate, silent, and irreversible experience. What was once duality, action and reception, strength, and surrender, reason and intuition, begins to merge. And you watch in serene amazement as the inner marriage takes place. It is the meeting of your masculine principle and your feminine principle, not in social roles, not in external forms, but in the energies that have lived within you since the beginning. The impulse to advance and the call to embrace, the sword and the chalice, the sun and the moon. And when they recognize each other, forgive each other, and finally embrace each other within your inner temple, something subtly explodes, but not as before, not as that release that comes and goes. Here, there is no escape, there is permanence. It is the ecstasy that does not take you out of your body. It immerses you in it. It is an expansion that comes not from physical touch, but from a vibration that rises from the base of your head to the top, as if heaven were coming down to kiss the earth within you. And in that instant, you do not feel the orgasm. You become the orgasm, a state of unity so absolute, so timeless that it cannot be described, only inhabited, and even without movement, even in silence, tears flow. Because you know, you have found the sacred within the sacred, and you realize that everything you sought outside has always been waiting within. This union, this wholeness, this reminder that, in essence, you were never half, you were always the whole. This is the secret of the great mystics hidden in symbols and metaphors. They were not talking about carnal pleasure. They were pointing to a return, to the one, to the infinite, to the God who dwells within you, in form and without form. Now take a deep breath. If this resonated with you, if something inside you was touched by this memory, then write in the comments, "I return to the sacred within me." Like this video so that more souls can find this path. And if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the channel. Because here, the void is sacred. And each word, an invitation to your inner truth.